You're listening to the most captivating podcast in iTunes. That's right, the Elite Man Podcast, where we turn average men into elite men every day. We interview the very best experts from the lifestyle, health, fitness, social, and even entrepreneurial worlds. And with their help, we give you some of the best advice on the planet. Subscribe now if you haven't already and enjoy the show. And oh yeah, if you really enjoy it, leave us a review. All right, guys, we're live. It's Justin Stenstrom from Elite Man Magazine, and in today's episode entitled How I Reversed My Severe Chronic Disease and Recovered My Health, I'm doing a solo episode. I've been talking about this episode for the past few weeks and actually alluded to it over the course of the past few months and maybe even year or so, where I mentioned that I'd be talking about this one day soon. And today's the day I'm going to share my entire story of what I've been going through the past few years. So this is a long story, and I'm not really sure how long this episode's going to be honest with you. It could be short. I'm going to try to make it as short as possible because I think it could be a very long episode, but I don't want to make it super long. So I'm going to try to keep things concise and as straightforward as possible. But as I mentioned in the title a moment ago, for the past few years, I have been dealing with a severe condition, severe chronic disease, you can call it. You can call it probably a number of things. It could probably fit under a few different categories if you want to. If there's an overarching umbrella, it could probably be within a few different categories within that umbrella for sure. So this is an episode I've actually been dreading about kind of doing. In a way, I've been dreading about doing it, and in a way, I've been hoping to do this episode for a long time, because way back when I first started this journey of recovering my health and overcoming this condition, in my mind, in the back of my mind, it was like many other things I'd fought and overcome in my life before that point. Like, for instance, the tendinitis story, where I talk about that 2 weeks ago in that episode, and I've mentioned it throughout the years a couple of times, where I overcame that severe tendinitis issue, and of course the whole anxiety, depression, panic attack issue. I wrote the book Elite Mind covering that entire subject, the mental health subject. It was kind of like that, and there's been a few other issues that were pretty severe in my life that I've overcome. Those are the kind of the big ones that stick out right now, but there's been other ones as well over the years that really knocked me down, and I had to dig deep and figure out the solution to those problems. And then once I figured out those solutions, acted on those problems, took action on those problems, and stayed determined in having a resolve to overcome them, and eventually I did. So in the back of my mind, a few years back when this was really bad, a part of me was hoping for this day where I could share this new story with you guys and share the journey I had and took to overcome it, and all the mental toughness and resolve and determination and grit and all that crap that has to go into something. Not even crap, I shouldn't say that, but all that stuff that has to go into something when you really want something and you have to overcome a major obstacle or problem in your life. There's a lot of things that go into it, and a few years back I was hoping for this day where I could share this with you, because that day would mean that I was successful. And that day has come. So I'm not 100% there yet, but I am there enough to share the success. So I'm about 95% successful, give or take. And there's still a little thing that'll pop up here and there, a little hiccup here and there that'll come. Just like anything else in life, you're never 100% anything, really. If you think about it, there's always little things that, linger here or there or whatever. But when you can be 95% or 90%, and 95% of the time you're great, everything's awesome, everything's perfect in that sense of like you can do anything you want and your life isn't hindered, or you don't have these reservations of doing different things, and you don't have different things that you can't do anymore. That's the point of success for me. So maybe I will be 100% in a year, a couple of years from now, but 95% is pretty damn good for me. And I've been, as I mentioned, thinking about this for the past couple of months and how I wanted to share this with you and share the story and the journey and all that stuff. And I was kind of debating, like, how much more do I want to wait? How much longer do I want to put this off? Because I'm feeling pretty damn good. And I was feeling pretty damn good 2-3 months ago. And I'm feeling even better right now today, like even a little bit more better today than I was just a couple months ago. And so it continues to get better and better. But it was just kind of thinking, like, when do I want to share this with you guys? When do I want to share this whole story with you and and share the journey? Because I think there's a lot to learn from it. And I think it offers a lot of people a lot of hope in a lot of ways. And like I mentioned a couple weeks back, the power of hope and having hope in your life and seeing other people do things. And, you know, when they can overcome something, it gives you the hope and faith that you can do it as well. And it gives you a playbook too, as well, for that specific thing, but also other things that you can apply it to in life. So when you see somebody overcome a major obstacle, it's like, holy shit, this guy did it. I didn't think anybody could do it before this guy did it. But now that I see somebody can do it, I can do it too. Or I can, like, as crazy as this is, and I'll get it, and trust me, I'm going to get into it in a moment of some of these crazy things, these symptoms and stuff that I went through. As crazy as this was, as crazy as this, you know, thing that this guy overcome and did that honestly many people would say is impossible, many people would say is not possible in 2020 or in this day and age. When they see that type of thing, I think it inspires them to be able to go out and overcome whatever the hell they're facing as well. And honestly, it's a pretty incredible story. If I look back at it now, someone else told me this, part of me probably wouldn't even believe them when they first told me, but I think if I really believed this person, I really trusted this person, like I hope you guys trust me, I would believe them. I would believe that it's true. I would believe that it's possible. I would believe them that, this really happened to them, and it would inspire me. It would motivate me. It would encourage me to go out and overcome those things that I want to overcome in my life. So whether you're facing a chronic disease, chronic condition, a sickness, an illness, or whatever sort, or whether you're just facing something in your life that you really have to overcome, or you really have to do, or you've been kind of putting off, I think this story is going to really apply and help a lot of people. I think it's going to help a lot of people out and seeing what's possible. And that's really what I've been doing on the podcast the past few years anyways, is just bringing on these incredible people who challenge the belief of what we all think is possible. These people that come on the show week in and week out, and they share their incredible stories with you, and they overcame something major in their life, or they did something that was never done before. They do the nearly impossible every single day, and they help out incredible people. They help themselves in their own lives, and they change something incredible. And that's really what it's been about the past few years with the show. It's been about bringing as many of these voices on to show you what is actually possible out there, what you can do, what you can achieve. And like, most people will say that these things are impossible. Most people won't believe that these things can happen. Most people want to live in a bubble of sorts, and they only believe what they see on TV, what they see on, mainstream media, what someone, authority figure, has told them for the past 20, 30, 40 years of their life. They just buy into the mainstream advice and information out there, and oftentimes that information is very wrong, and it goes against what you and I, as a listener of the show and as the host of the show, who have listened to all these people for the past, I don't even know how many years I've been doing this now, like 5 or 6 years of the podcast, listening to all these people for so many years now, so many episodes, 283 episodes. What we know to be true, what we know to be possible. We hear these people, we see their results. Even last week, medical medium Anthony William, you go on his page like I talked about in that episode and the one before, you see all these people week after week, actually daily, day after day, numerous times a day sometimes. It's like almost around the clock, all these people who have made these incredible recoveries. They come back from the most horrible, debilitating chronic disease conditions imaginable that nobody else, science and research and mainstream health and medicine, has not been able to help these people with ever. The track record, if you stack these two up, you have mainstream research and medicine, and then you have Anthony William and the people that have followed his programs and his protocols. And again, I'm one of those people. I'll share that in a moment, exactly what I did, exactly what I was facing too. But you stack up all his results against that of anyone in mainstream media and medicine, any doctors out there in mainstream media, and even, you know, some of the other people, the functional medicine guys, which some of them are great, but, you know, some of them aren't. But you stack his results up with anybody else out there, and it just pales in comparison. The guy is literally changing so many people's lives, healing so many people from the worst debilitating conditions imaginable. Everything you can think of. I wouldn't even go down the list, but every condition, I talk about it in that episode over and over. There's so many different things in there, but it just kind of, and he gets his information from a spirit of all things, a spirit that talks to him, speaks to him. He calls it the spirit of compassion. Now, if you just hear that from the outside, you think this guy is batshit crazy. You think this guy's just another kook and, you know, he's just another charlatan trying to make money, you know, this psychic guy who's just trying to make money by saying a bunch of shit and going online and having a blog and all this other stuff. Like, that's what you would immediately think if you heard this on, say, you know, any one of the mainstream media outlets out there. They bring this guy on, they kind of try to make him look like a fool, and, you know, they bash his name, they trash him. But most people hear this and they hear, oh, this guy gets his information from a spirit, a higher source. Like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, a ghost talks to him, like God talks to him. And so, like, you immediately want to think, you immediately want to be skeptical and think that this guy is just full of shit. But then you actually dig deeper into his stuff. And like I said, you look at his results, you see the videos, you see the before and after pictures, you see all these testimonies, these people writing paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of their incredible healing stories. And you see it over and over and over again. And then you actually look at his advice and you look at his protocols, you look at the things he's come up with and talks about every single day. He does all these Facebook Lives and these not many interviews, but these Facebook Lives and these Instagram Lives and these stories. And I mean, he just talks about it with such a declaration of truth. And you see that all the results over and over and over again. And you look, and again, you look at his protocols, and they work. They all make sense. This guy actually makes sense. What he's saying is legitimate. Even if you want to take the whole spirit side out of it, you don't want to believe in, you know, the spirit aspect of it. You don't want to believe that this guy has a source that talks to him that we can't explain or see or even hear ourselves. Take that element out of it. Just look at his actual protocols, and this guy's healing people with his protocols, his heavy metal detox, his celery juice, all this stuff that he comes up with out of nowhere because no one else has ever come up with it. He doesn't have any citations or research or, you know, journals that he reads. He just comes up with it, basically what looks like out of thin air, but it's from what he says is a source that talks to him, a spirit. And it's incredible. These things we look at on the surface and we think ordinarily, or we would have thought before, say, listening to this show for the past few years, that these guys are fucking crazy, that it cannot be possible, that it doesn't exist, like these guys are just full of shit. But then you look at the real results, you look at, that's what the real studies are. You look at the case studies, that's the real proof right there. The results from these thousands and thousands and thousands of people, that's the real case studies. That's the things that really matter, is the things that are changing people, not just putting some, you know, numbers on a chart and mixing around some data and calling something this and, you know, theories and all that other shit. The real shit that works is the shit that causes the results. The proof is in the results. The proof is in the testimonials. The proof is in the case studies of all these people. And try it yourself. That's why I sent out 100 books to you guys, because I want you guys to try it out yourselves and see how much it heals your life like it healed mine. And it's incredible. Like, his information, he's my go-to guy now for health. He's the number one guy I look up for health. Sometimes it's like little details like here and there that I can't find in, you know, some of his books, or if I search them online, I'm searching for something real quick, I'll have to like use different sources and kind of find some other people that I trust. But he is by far my number one guy that I will go to for anything health related. And I only do that because I know he works, and I tried, like I mentioned in that podcast and the one before it, I tried everything under the sun to help this condition, which I promise I'm going to get into in one moment. I tried everything under the sun to fix this condition for a number of years, and this didn't just start a couple of years ago. This was around since I was 18 years old, and so it's been around for over a decade. It's been in the background, though, for over a decade. And then it kind of surfaced a little bit over the years. And then in the past couple of years, it really surfaced and hit me hard. But so I've been searching. I've already been tuned into this problem for years, like trying to figure this thing out for years. I've already been doing all this research. And this is kind of what got me into this whole podcasting thing in the first place, and being into health and being into self-help. That was a big part of it. In Elite Mind, I actually cover a bit of this. You know, there might be a chapter I think that probably a few pages, 3, 4, 5 pages in a chapter that covers some of this stuff pretty well, or at least a little bit, kind of gives you an idea. So if you haven't gotten Elite Mind, make sure you get the book, elitemindbook.com. Make sure you grab that book. Also, while we're at it, go to elitelifenutrition.com to get the best supplements in the world. We actually recently updated that page and have all kinds. We have all of our supplements on there now, but the zinc is back up as well. The men's multivitamin is back up as well. So elitelifenutrition.com, just a quick plug for that. But it's all covered. Not it's all covered, but some of it is covered, and the basis of what I'm going to talk about in a moment is covered in Elite Mind, that book. I don't actually hint much at, I hint a little bit at it, but I don't get into great detail. But let me just dive into it now then while I'm at it. So in the book Elite Mind, there is, I forget which chapter it is, but it's in the front, towards the front of the book. So one of the first few chapters where I talk about boxing and how I used to box and how I wanted to be this champion boxer, and I dedicated myself like you wouldn't believe for 2 years of boxing. I basically trained 6 hours a day for 2 years, and there was a part of that too towards the end of it where there was a lot of like crazy shit going on, where it was kind of like a self-harm thing where I was basically harming myself in a way to kind of, because of my demons inside, my depression, my anxiety. This was my way of harming myself in an unconscious way, was the whole boxing to begin with. But in my mind, it was a flawed, pretty fucked up, flawed sense of what I thought was right and wrong, and what I thought in my mind, as being a 17-year-old kid at the time, what I wanted to pursue as a career, what I wanted to actually legitimately, like in my mind, I was legitimately going to be I knew I wasn't going to be heavyweight at that point because I'm not a huge guy, but I wanted to be like a welterweight or middleweight boxing champion. And I actually boxed. I was pretty decent at it, but I wasn't good enough to ever be champion level, even though there was this guy one day who at the gym, I was boxing with him. I mentioned this actually, I think in the Frank Miniter interview as well, but there was a pro boxer in there who said to me one day, you know, Justin, you're really good, man. Like, you got some good skills. You just got to keep practicing, be hard, you know, keep working, training hard. You're going to be a world champ one day. And I go, no way. And I'm just talking to him, like, no way. Thanks so much, man. He's like, yeah. You know how I know? Like, he's talking to me. I go, no. How do you know? He goes, because every time you get hit, you come forward. All these other guys, when they get hit, they back up. They kind of cower down for a second, and you know, they don't want to keep getting hit. But when you get hit, you just keep coming forward. It doesn't phase you. And like for me at the time, I was like, holy shit, like that's such like great props. Like I was like honored, and you know, my chest puffed out like 6 inches when this guy said that. I was like, you know, so pumped up that he said that about me. And you know, I was like, oh, yeah, I really am going to be a champion. This kind of reaffirmed the fact that I was going to be a boxing champion. But the truth of the story is the truth of the matter is, you know, even back then, as much as I was in denial about it, I wasn't coming forward because, you know, I was like this, you know, badass fighter or anything. I was just coming forward because I didn't care about getting hit at the time. I could feel it, but it didn't bother me because I was, like I said, it was kind of like my way of self-harming myself. I wanted to get hit. I wanted to just get in there and fucking fight, like, you know, just balls to the wall fighting and no regard for anything, just going, like, that's how I fought. And it wasn't because I was this badass fighter, like I said, but it was more because it was my way of just kind of acting out and self-harming myself in some, you know, psychologically flawed way. And I bring this up because this is where the genesis of my problems the past few years started. It was because of the boxing. It was because of the head trauma. And another thing that went along with that, see, if I rested and took care of myself and did it right, I wouldn't have any of these problems that I've had the past few years. But I was such like balls to the wall back then, and so like misguidedly dedicated to being this, like, you know, badass boxing fighter, that I just constantly sparred in the gym all the time. And by sparring, it was basically going at these other fighters and just fighting. It was basically a regular fight. Like when we say spar, it's most of the time it's like taking it easy, maybe going like 67%, 70% on your punches. You kind of hold back a little bit. When I was sparring these guys, it was basically 99%. Like we were going at it. It was a real fight, and I was doing it all the time for close to 2 years, the sparring aspect of it. And so that is the genesis, like the head trauma, the headaches I started getting, the brain damage, I mean, really the brain damages, that all started from boxing, specifically from boxing. And then I wasn't sleeping good, and I was always like overtraining. Like 6 hours a day is way too much for someone who's not doing that full time. Like I was still in high school, and I was still training like 6 hours a day. So there was like no time for schoolwork. There was no time for sleep. There was no time for rest. And then I just continued to do it over and over again, just kept pushing myself, never backed up, and never really rested. So whether I could have been a world champion, I don't think so, even if I rested and all that other stuff. But I do know I wouldn't be as I wouldn't have had these problems relating to head trauma as I had the past few years if I was smarter about it, if I didn't just go balls to the wall, and if I actually had, kind of someone watching out a little bit more for me in that sense. I'm not blaming anybody at all, actually. I take responsibility 100%. But I think if someone was just a little more aware of it, they could have kind of guided me a little bit better in that sense. But I say all these things because I never got knocked out like a concussion, but I did have, like, looking back on it, looking through all the shows too the past few years, you'll see a bunch of TBI shows, of brain-related shows, neurological shows. All of those things were shows because they all interest me incredibly of the past few years, and they were all me trying to learn more and more about my own condition and figure out what was going on. So learning like those things over the past few years was critical for me, and just understanding things and trying to figure out exactly what was going on, how to recover my brain back. And so all these things, I'll just kind of allude to it right now, but all these conditions I've had the past few years have been related to my brain. And I'll get into specifics in a moment of exactly what happened, but they all stem from these brain traumas I had, well, right now, probably close to 12 years ago. So over a decade, closer to 12 years. And so kind of jumping forward in the story, it all really stems from this. But jumping forward, maybe to, like, say the age of, so after that, right after the boxing, I quit boxing, kind of smartened up after that, realized that I wasn't going to be a champion. I had to rest. My head was, always pounding and had headaches all the time. It kind of took a little while for my head to, and this actually coincided, believe it or not, with the elite mind issues of anxiety, panic attacks, depression. That was all intertwined with the head trauma. And you look at the research, you look at the regular research, and if you ask Anthony himself, he'll tell you this, but inflammation is a key part of anxiety, depression, mental health problem. Like, inflammation is a true trigger for those types of things. And so that actually triggered a lot of these problems with depression and anxiety right around that time. And so it took me a little while to get past that. And even when I did get past that, I was left a little bit like with some brain fog and some like little bit of cognitive learning issues from that. And it took, like, I kind of got over it a little bit, but it was never 100% over it. And say fast forward like 5 or 6 years, things were going pretty well. They weren't really bad. And I was kind of like, over that, period of time of obviously being anxious, depressed, brain fog, all that crap. But I was like wrestling around one day with a friend, and they accidentally kneed me in the nose. And at the time, it was just like, it didn't even hurt. It wasn't even like I could feel it, but it didn't hurt. And it wasn't even a big deal. I think we even kept wrestling a few more minutes. And then, like, later on the next day, my head started hurting. And then I went to the gym, like, later that day or the following day after that, and just kind of, tried to brush it off like it was nothing. Ended up going to the gym, doing a really hard workout. And I forget exactly what I was doing, but I believe I was on, like, the treadmill or the elliptical, and maybe both, just going, like, super hard, like, highest speed. Like, I always, back then anyways, would go, like, incredibly hard, and I forget, it might have even been training for like a Spartan race or something. But I remember going home that day, and all of a sudden I was getting like these weird like brain pressure things going on, and it was kind of just like felt weird. Like, I knew when I was done with that gym session that it kind of went too far. And then the next day my head hurt like it never hurt before. Like, it was pounding headaches and just like all kind of like light sensitivity. And I remember just like looking at the computer screen, and I couldn't stare at the computer screen for more than like a minute or so, because my head would just like feel like it was going to explode. I had to like lay down. I was like spinning. My head was spinning, and all these things just kept going on. And I went to a couple of doctors, neurologists, went to the hospital at one point. I did all these things, and it wasn't like going away like the other times before, where a headache would just kind of come and go. But it was actually kind of getting worse, and it just like stayed the same. And I took a bunch of stuff, and this was way back when I didn't know anything about supplements or anything, but I was kind of like looking stuff up online. I took some fish oil, I took some, I don't even know, but I took a bunch of random things back then that I kind of like heard were good for headaches and post-concussion also. But long story short, that ended up lasting about 6 months. I had post-concussion syndrome from that knee to the nose. That lasted about 6 months of having just like constant headaches, couldn't sleep good at all, maybe an hour or two a night for like 6 months. Weird symptoms like the light sensitivity, the computer screen sensitivity, these like starry kind of things like popping up here and there. Like, it's just like crazy symptoms for like 6 months. Finally overcame that, just sort of like started eating healthier and might have took some better supplements like say turmeric or something. I honestly forget, but I think I started getting a better regimen going down and slowly pulled myself out of that over the course of like 6 months. I was finally like better after like 6 months. So after that, it was kind of back to like normal again, where I was like still, not 100% normal, but I was fairly okay for a few years after that. Then one day, and this is where it really started, this is where the story kind of really picks up and what I've been dealing with the past few years. So you fast forward another, say, not 5 years, but probably 3 years. So I've been going through this extensively for the past 3 years. And you fast forward about 3 years, and one day I wake up after a night out. I wake up after a night out, and I forget exactly what happened, but I think I hit my head or something. I had a couple of drinks with a buddy or a couple of buddies, and I believe I'd hit my head or something like that. Something to that extent. It wasn't anything like major, but I did hit my head coming home that night. I honestly don't remember the exact details, but I do remember that's the basis of that story. Coming home that night after a night out of drinking a few drinks, come home, wake up the next morning, and all of a sudden I have this weird, so I'm dreaming, and in the dream I'm boxing again, which is kind of ironic. It doesn't even really, I didn't mean it to play into the story like that well, but I was actually boxing in the dream, and I wake up and I'm like throwing punches in the dream, and then I wake up in reality, like this isn't dreaming anymore, but in reality I'm punching, and I end up punching myself right in the face, like super hard, like not just like a little like tap or brush, but like an actual, fucking good punch to the face, and it's my own face. And I'm like, that was pretty fucking weird, but, and that kind of hurt, you know what I mean? Like I've always, like from that point forward, after the post-concussion syndrome, it was never really, I was never back to 100%ing it. So I was always very careful about my head and like what I was doing and what I was like, getting into, like the activities and stuff. Like I would always be very mindful of like whacking my head on anything. I was never going to box again. I knew that. Even wrestling, I didn't really wrestle anymore. Jiu-jitsu, which I loved. I did that for a couple of years as well. I fell in love with that, but after a certain while, I couldn't really do that anymore because like little things would trigger these headaches after the post-concussion syndrome thing, like these little things that would slowly, like it became more and more innocuous things that would trigger these headaches that would last a few days and sometimes a few weeks. So what I mean by innocuous is actually the stimuli for which it would take to cause a headache that would last a couple of days or a couple of weeks in some cases became less and less like innocent. In like, so what I mean by that is obviously if someone punches you in the face, you're probably going to, like a good punch to the face, you're probably going to get a headache. If a little kid, like I have nieces and nephews, and they were always young, like little kids. My oldest one's 12. He's been around my life for all 12 years, and I've got two other ones, 7 and 5. They've also been around my entire life, and when they're like little babies or little infants, they're 2, 3, 4 years old. They wrestle with you, play around with them, and they might like accidentally smack you or something in the face. You get smacked in the face by like a little nephew or niece at that age, it's not going to do anything. For me, though, I remember this one time, I believe it was my niece, who was like probably 3 or 4, accidentally smacked me in the face. She was a pretty good smack, but nowhere near like a punch when you say boxing somebody. I mean, I'm from a grown man. But I remember like it never hurts either. So it didn't hurt. But I do remember getting a headache about an hour or two afterwards, and that headache lasted like a few days. And that's not normal. And so I knew that there was like, some stuff neurologically still going on from these things. And so like other things too, like say bumping into somebody, which like, you're playing basketball or something, or you're going to work and you accidentally bump into somebody, you're walking in the subway, whatever, you bump into somebody, driving a car, hitting a pothole, the littlest things like that, or say slamming a door and having my hand on the doorknob still, but slamming the door shut would also trigger a headache that would last days, sometimes a week or two. Also, breaking the rack and pool, like billiards, when in the beginning when you smack the cue, break the rack, that the thrust of the stick onto the ball, which I'm holding on to with my hand, would then somehow shoot a through the nerves up into my brain and would trigger a headache that would last a few days. Sometimes, if like I said, a week or two. In some severe cases, some of these things like a hammer, for instance, I was nailing in some nails with a hammer, and I was pounding away for say an hour or two of work, doing whatever. That actually has in the past caused a headache that lasted like 2 weeks. That motion of the repetitive banging of a nail with a hammer and my hand holding that hammer shot up through the nerves in my arm and into, I believe it's the vagus nerve. I actually talked about a little of this with Anthony before that call that we did. I think he said it was the vagus nerve though, which I already kind of knew about, but he kind of confirmed a lot of these things anyways. But he it shot up through the vagus nerve and goes directly into the brain, and that caused that motion of the hammer and the nail caused a headache that lasted a couple of weeks. And for any other normal human being out there, that wouldn't cause any headache that would last any second of any minute of any day. But when you're going through these weird neurological things, you get all kinds of crazy symptoms. And these things that I just mentioned, they weren't really that bad, but they were slowly getting more and more noticeable after that post-concussion thing of, say, around the age of 23 or so. And then fast forward like 3 years, they were very much there, but I kind of had been working around them and sort of like not ignoring them, but working around them to, like I said, limit different things, avoid different things, and also take a bunch, by this time I was eating very healthy, taking great supplements, doing the things I needed to do to be okay in everyday life. But one day I wake up and I punch myself and I'm like, what, that was fucking weird, but kind of brush it off. Like, I'm like, whatever. I've had these crazy sleep things in the past. If you read the book too as well, I mention a couple of them in the book. I've had many episodes of sleep paralysis. I had that for years. I had it many, many times, but I fixed that with magnesium and a couple other things pretty easily. Like, once I figured out you could fix that, it pretty much went away. And I'd get one occasionally every now and then, and I don't know when the last time I ever had one of them was, maybe a couple of years ago, but I'll still probably get one of those at some point. I've had this exploding head syndrome thing where it sounds like someone's shooting a gun off in the back of your head, like you're sleeping and all of a sudden you hear the loudest bang you've ever heard in your entire life. It's fucking scary, to say the least. Like, it literally sounds like someone just like blew up your brain with a gun or a bomb or whatever. Like, it's that loud, and you just wake up with like sweat pouring down the sides of your face because you're scared shitless. I've had that a couple of times in my life. That's probably the scariest thing. And then I get this RBD thing. That's what it ends up being. It's called REM behavioral disorder, where you start acting out your dreams. So I'm in the dream, I'm boxing somebody, and for whatever reason, it like kind of shifts and whatever, and instead of like punching the air like I'm trying to punch somebody, I end up punching myself because I guess there was nobody to hit in real life. But that's what RBD is. RBD is you're acting out your dreams. And this had to happen actually a couple more times before I looked it up, because at first I was like, whatever, I've gotten weird sleep things before, it's not a big deal. But it happened like maybe 2 or 3 more times in the next week. And by like that third time, I was like, let me just figure out how to fix this. Let me go back to my old playbook. And, I figured out the sleep paralysis thing. I figured out some of the other crap. I've had insomnia many, many times in the past. I figured that out pretty well. Let me go back to my old playbook, figure this thing out, and then carry on with my life, because, it's just another thing I'll just put on the notch. Another notch I'll put on the belt and move past, but it's not a big deal. I really didn't think it was a big deal, but I look it up, and as it turns out, RBD, which many people have never heard of, but I actually did mention it in Elite Mind too as an aside, but RBD, REM behavioral disorder, and this is where it kind of gets a little scary. RBD is incredibly intimately related to Parkinson's disease. People who get RBD usually get Parkinson's disease within 5 to 15 years. And it's not like there's somewhat of a correlation. It's not like there's like maybe a connection there. It's like 95% probability that you get Parkinson's within 5 to 15 years. I looked it up. I looked through a bunch of research papers and just kind of studied everything about it. Once this popped up, I'm just looking for a regular, like I'll do a Google search when I initially did this, and popped up like what's going, like a couple of symptoms I was getting, acting out dreams, punching yourself in face, like what is it? You Google that, and then the first thing that pops up is this, and then you start exploring this, and it pops up over and over and over again, and in every single article that you're reading, Parkinson's is mentioned, and then you start diving into it more, and not only is it mentioned, but it's like, holy shit, when people have this rare fucking sleep thing, they get fucking Parkinson's. Like, they get it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They fucking get Parkinson's disease. This is like the early canary in the coal mine, so to speak, of people who get not everybody that has Parkinson's get this, but everybody that gets this gets Parkinson's within like 5 to 15 years. And so that was a huge fucking wake-up call for me. And, obviously, I was pretty fucking scared shitless when I started reading these articles, and it wasn't the best news I wanted to hear. I'm thinking I have to take a mineral or vitamin or something, get over this weird sleep thing. And actually, in reality, it's like, no, dude, there's something fucking seriously going on in your brain. And what you've been experiencing the past almost decade now, at this point, 3 years ago, is not just like a coincidence. It's not just like some, innocuous thing on its own. It's actually pretty fucking serious. Like I kind of always thought it was going to be. I kind of always knew it was something serious. Like, some of the weird symptoms I was getting and some of the problems I had, and especially with sleep, like looking back, like all these sleep things early on, that I was getting the paralysis and all these other things. And not that people who get paralysis get, what I had, but when you combine all these factors and you look at some of the clues, like going back, it was very clear that there was a lot of fucking weird, wacky things going on, and they were all related to those days of boxing. And not only that, but then I should mention this, that I talked to a friend of Anthony's, Anthony William, who went through his protocol a few years back. And she followed his protocol and did all this other stuff. So she healed herself of a major chronic disease condition, and she was helping other people using his protocol. Like when I first stumbled across his stuff, she was helping other people who had severe chronic disease conditions. So I ended up reaching out to some help for her, and she counseled me through some of his protocols and what to take and some of the other stuff. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I want to mention that now because she was one of the first people to tell me that it was definitely some of the brain stuff and the traumatic injuries. Like that was a huge part of it. But it was not only that, it was also some virus stuff that I had in me, which many people have, as Anthony mentioned in the last episode. Many people are unaware that they have Epstein-Barr, they have herpes, they have shingles, they have cytomegalovirus, they have HPV. There's so many, and there's varieties. There's like 30, 60 varieties of some of these different viruses. So some of us have multiple viruses. I definitely had a viral load in me that whole time. I think boxing just brought it out, and the stress of the boxing and the stress of the not sleeping, and then the, brain damage, and then, all those, and then heavy metals too. Like heavy metals were definitely in my brain as well. And they're in a lot of people's brains, but you combine some of these factors and you have a recipe for disaster. And the cool thing though about what Anthony teaches and, some of his protocols is, you don't have to, he's all about bringing awareness to different things and shining a light in some areas. Like you wouldn't even know that, say, Lyme was really a viral thing. Like it's usually Epstein-Barr, and most people think it's a bacterial thing, and that's why nobody ever heals from it when they have chronic Lyme. It's incredible information to know once you know the true cause of some of these conditions, because then you go out and heal it. But in another way, it's also incredible because you don't actually have to know for sure, like 100%, that it's whatever it is, because if you follow some of the protocols, if you follow some of the supplements he recommends, some of the foods he recommends especially, they will heal your, say, liver or your heart or your kidneys or your adrenal glands or your thyroid, or in my case, your brain. Like some of these things, like wild blueberries he mentions, they actually literally create new neurons in your brain. They create the nerve cells in your brain, which is the tissue of your brain, to help you heal up. Like when you have brain damage, you lose obviously some of those neurons in your brain, and then obviously the neurotransmitters get out of whack because you can't produce them. The dopamine, the serotonin, the GABA, all that stuff. And same thing goes for across the body, the liver, the kidney, etc. There's different parts, like you having these specific foods, or you're taking specific vitamins, herbs, minerals. You have these things, and they actually create the cells that you need, or they'll support the production of these new cells that, need to regenerate or re-thrive or regrow, or just start working again like they never worked before. And so in my case, it was like I didn't actually ever know 100% what it was, but I did follow his protocol. And I listened to, that woman who worked with him before, and she told me some of the protocols as well, of like how to heal up and what you got to do. You got to get some of these, you got to drop down that viral load for sure. Everybody can benefit from that. You got to also benefit from the heavy metals and bring down that load. Take the heavy metals out of your body, especially your brain. And then, but by doing that, and you're taking all these foods, you're eating all these incredibly helpful and healing foods, and then you're taking all these incredible vitamins and supplements, you're automatically healing your brain, even if you didn't know exactly what it was. Like, you kind of knew it was viral, you kind of knew it was heavy metals, you kind of knew it was from the head traumas and the concussions and all that stuff. We kind of knew all those things, but we didn't need an exact diagnosis or label to say that you had early Parkinson's, or you had early MS, or you had early ALS, or you had early Alzheimer's, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy, like some of these football players had. Like Aaron Hernandez was 27 years old, and he had CTE like stage 4 or something. He had the brain of a guy of like 65 years old with like stage whatever the hell dementia. Alzheimer's. He had a brain of somebody who had Alzheimer's disease for years, and he was only 27 years old. Like, there was literally holes in his brain, and that's one of the reasons why he went crazy. But I didn't need to know if it was I would have liked it. That would have been great, but I didn't need it to heal. I didn't need it to be CTE or Parkinson's or MS or AL, whatever. All those things are great, and use the protocols of like what those are designed for. You can heal up anything once you have a good idea of what it really is. So that was the case for me. Like, I didn't know for sure, but I'm going through all this shit, and 3 years ago, I'm kind of, I'll be honest. Once I had the reason I'm so proud of Elite Mind, and I really am proud of it, it's not because of the actual like overcoming of the anxiety or the depression and then gaining confidence. Those are incredible things. Those are really powerful things. Don't get me wrong. And it's an incredible mental health book. But I think the real big takeaway from Elite Mind is the ability that you get in believing in yourself, like having the ability to, and I talk about this all the time, but that elite mind is really having the ability to overcome anything that comes your way. Once you've overcome things like anxiety, panic attacks, depression, suicidal depression, and then you get this confidence that you can, do different things, you create this elite mind in yourself that you can do anything that comes your way. You can overcome any challenge, like anything that, I don't just say those types of things just to kind of bullshit people, or to just like talk like it's just some profound or esoteric concept. Those things are fucking real. Like, once you do these types of things, if you have anxiety and you overcome severe anxiety, if you had panic attacks all the time and you overcome that and you don't get any fucking panic attacks anymore, you can control it. If you have a depression and you can get over that depression and be happy again and it doesn't affect you in your life. If you have suicidal depression, maybe you've attempted suicide in your past, or maybe you thought about it in the past, and you get to the point where suicide's the furthest thing from your mind, and you just don't think about it anymore, and you love life, and you're happy with it, you're content with yourself, you do those types of things, you develop an elite mind. It just will come to you. It's automatic. And once you overcome those types of things, you can overcome anything that comes your way. There is nothing more crippling in your life than sitting in your room and crying yourself to sleep, and having no appetite because you're so depressed, and having no not even be able to get out of bed because you're so depressed. You're just so lifeless and helpless and hopeless and dejected, and you're facing all of those incredibly debilitating emotions. And I mean, that is literally the epitome of how bad and tough life can be. That there's nothing worse once you're feeling in that hole, you're in that rut, and everything just seems hopeless and everything around you is horrible. Like, I get it, and I hear, I know so many people that have gone through that, and I know so many people now that are fighting those types of battles. And I really feel for them in my heart because I felt those types of things, and I know how it feels. But if you can overcome those things, and this is why I love just sharing this message over and over, if you can overcome those types of things, the world literally becomes your oyster. You can do anything you want in this life. You can do anything you want in this world. And one of those things that includes is overcoming anything that comes your way. Because, once you overcome that, it doesn't mean like life is incredible. Your mindset changes, your belief in yourself changes for the rest of your life. But that doesn't mean you're gonna, life's gonna be roses for the rest of your life. That doesn't mean you're never gonna face hardship again. That doesn't mean you're never gonna face rejection again. That doesn't mean you're never gonna face, a huge setback or a blow or something that just knocks you to your knees again. That just means when you get those blows, you get knocked down to your knees again, you know how to get back up. That's what that means. That means you're going to get back up. That's what that means. And so, not to sound like, this incredibly enlightened person or anything, but when I was reading this and I, basically figured out, essentially, I had some type of like early Parkinson's. That's really what I had. That's, what are we, like 30 minutes into this episode? 45 minutes into this episode, what I basically had was early Parkinson's. I didn't actually have Parkinson's yet, but I had early Parkinson's. If I'd done nothing, I would have Parkinson's. In my mind, I really believe I would have Parkinson's right now doing this podcast episode with you. I wouldn't be doing this episode because I would have it, and I would probably, I don't know what I'd be doing, but I wouldn't be doing this. And, looking at the all the symptoms and all the things, and there's some more symptoms I gotta mention too, because it's not just what I mentioned so far, but there's a few other things I'm gonna get into in a second. But that's what I believe I had, and it's also what I believe I overcame. Now I'm 95% healed up from where I was 3 years ago, and I feel fucking incredible, and I feel amazing, and that's where I'm at. I feel, and this is why I'm ready to share the story with you guys, because if I wasn't ready, and this is why I haven't talked about it, I haven't mentioned any of this to anybody in 3 years. I actually told, so that's a lie. So it's a bit of a lie. It's exaggeration. I told 2 people that I'm really close to in life, and that's it. 2 people, and of all the people I know, and even family and close friends and all this other stuff, I haven't told anybody except for the 2 people who I had to tell. And I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want anyone to worry about me. I didn't want anyone to feel bad for me. I didn't want anyone to, stress about me, lose sleep about it over me. It was my fight to win. It was my battle, and it was something that I literally did to myself. I knew that I caused this to myself, and I didn't blame myself. I didn't put myself down for it. I just, it was a mistake way back when, doing all the things I did 12 years ago. But I wasn't going to let that drag me down and just hate myself over it. And I didn't want other people to feel bad. And I didn't want, I didn't want people to lose sleep over it. And because at the end of the day, maybe a little bit of support, a little more support would have benefited me. And, I could have taken it in a different way. I remember, I'm thinking back now to, I think, Jim Stavis, and he told his family and everybody knew, and they all gave him support and stuff. And I remember interviewing him, and he was going through like some kind of really serious maybe stage 4 cancer or something. He had really bad cancer. He overcame it. But I remember doing that interview and thinking, like, that's an interesting approach, but it just isn't my style. Like, I don't want to do that. It's not me. I wouldn't want to tell the world. And maybe I see some people do it, and it's, good for them. It works for them. That's awesome. But it's just not my approach. My approach instead was to, and I don't know if it's the right approach either. I'm just saying it's my approach. But my approach instead was to just keep it to myself, essentially, and put the work in. And so for the past 3 years, I've been putting in the work behind the scenes. The past year, though, the first year was really a wash. The past 2 years is where the success happened. The past 2 years is where the real success happened. The first year was just throwing shit on the wall and trying to find out what was going to stick, and to be honest, none of it did. But so let me go back to the story real quick, and I'll tie it back in. So I'm doing this research. It hits me. I basically have early Parkinson's. I'm doing all this research. Like most people at this point are going to be fucking debilitated. They're going to be crippled. They're going to be mentally broken. They're going to be, crying for days, weeks. Yeah, I'm not knocking anybody. I'm not trying to sound like, the superior fucking enlightened asshole, because I'm not. But I'm just telling you, like, I had the mindset in my head the whole time, I'm going to beat this. I don't know how I'm going to beat it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know like what steps to even take. But in the back of my mind, I was confident that I'm going to beat this. And that's just the mindset I had the whole time. And I'm not going to say every single minute of this entire process, the past 3 years, I was like confident in my, my determination, my self-assurance, and, all those things, like, was 100%. But because there was definitely times where I'm not gonna lie, there was like 100 times in the past 3 years where I was like questioning what I was doing, and questioning my sanity, questioning my ability to actually be successful. What the hell am I going to do if this doesn't work? I've churned over so many stones, and so many things just aren't working out. I don't know what the hell to do. I've talked to so many people. I have, at this point, 3 years ago, I was interviewing everybody under the sun, bringing on all kinds of doctors. I made a bunch of doctor friends, naturopathic doctors in particular. Scientists. I got a few scientist friends. I got some chemistry, got some chemist friends, and some just brilliant, like, Ayurvedic friends, and people that did holistic medicine, functional medicine, some functional medicine doctors, New York Times bestsellers. Like, I'm making friends with all these people, and I'm reading their books, and I'm checking out their interviews, and I'm bringing them on my show to interview them, and picking their brains. And then some of these people, not many of them, but a few of them, I reached out to and kind of told them some of the symptoms I was going. I didn't dive into the whole specific details of everything, because I said I didn't really want to share the whole thing, but I would pick their brains, kind of like, almost like I forget the word, but it's like compartmentalizing, like, different things, so like they could kind of help me out in this area, like, so I tried to, like, almost like set it up like I needed as much information as possible to help my condition, but I didn't want to reveal the whole story to them, the whole picture, because I was kind of like, part of me was embarrassed, and part of me was scared that it would get out, and part of me was just like, I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want to share this whole thing with everybody out there. And so I picked their brains here and there, and like try to figure things out. But and at that point too, like, I'm still relying on mainstream medicine, mainstream doctors and stuff. So I go to everything. I literally went to well over, maybe even close to 24 different primary care physicians, neurologists, specialists, and then, when these guys have absolutely no clue of how to help me, no clue of what's going on. Most of these people have no idea what RBD even is, and never even heard of it. Not to mention some of those other symptoms. I'll just dive into that quickly, because it wasn't just like, that alone would have definitely caused me to go to the doctor, but it wouldn't have caused as much of an urgency of trying to figure it out, like, right away. And maybe actually it would, because I'm kind of like a proactive guy. Maybe it would, but I don't think it would, but some of the other symptoms, like, I started combining things and really putting the pieces of things that were happening to me together, and it was like kind of shocking. Like, I started getting these weird, like, spasms in my legs. And listen, guys, I know you're probably like me and have neglected your skincare in the past. Whether you're too busy, too lazy, or just clueless, like I was for so long, it's past time you started doing more than just splashing some water on your face. Here's the cold hard truth, guys. Your skin has needs. If you want it to look as good as possible for as long as possible, you need to address them now. We get it. You might not know where to start, but there's a company that's taken all the guesswork out of it for you. Lumen. Lumen is on a mission to help give men the amazing skin they deserve through high-quality, expert-created products delivered right to your door. All of their products are formulated specifically for men's skin and made to target skin issues with maximum efficacy, using top-notch ingredients like charcoal, green tea extract, and vitamin C. It's not just about looking good, it's about feeling good. You need good skin health, especially as you get older, to prevent long-term damage. After using Lumen, my skin feels incredible. It feels fresh and clean and makes me look and feel amazing. Seriously, it's that good. All their products are super easy to use too, so don't worry about having to dedicate much of your precious time each day to applying them. My favorite Lumen products are the Charcoal Cleanser and Ultra Hydrating Moisturizing Balm. These two products keep out the dirt and oil from clogging my pores and make sure my face doesn't get overly dried up after showering, respectively. Even if you have no idea where to begin, Lumen makes it so easy to find the right skin management system for you. Choose from different skin concerns to address, or just pick up a simple starter pack for free. You deserve to look and feel your best, and here's where to start. Go to lumenskin.com/eliteman to get a 1-month free trial of everything you need to start your skincare journey at home. That's lumenskin.com/eliteman to get your first month free. lumenskin.com/eliteman. Around this same time, might even have been a little bit before, but I didn't notice it, but then like around this time of like the RBD symptoms, it all really started coming together full swing. There was like some spasms. There was, of course, the headaches, which got like really, really bad. So even just the smallest, most innocuous thing would cause headaches that would last many days and sometimes a few weeks, several weeks. Like the hammer, I couldn't even touch a hammer because I knew that was, I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't swing a hammer. The slamming the door shut, I mean, that I would do that by accident sometimes, and headache for 2 weeks because of that. And pool, I had to stop playing pool altogether because if I hit the pool stick, I broke the rack. Headache for like 3 or 4 days, guaranteed. Like no questions, guaranteed. Anything where even like I'm playing basketball or something, if someone brushes, just a brush up against me, and God forbid they accidentally like smack my head if I'm going up for a layup or something, that's a headache for 2-3 weeks. Smack in the head, and not even not even a punch or anything like that, but just a smack in the head, 2-3 weeks headache, nonstop headache. So all these things, you combine them, I started getting these weird twitches in like my thumbs and fingers and stuff. I got these facial spasms. Like I was looking that up at one point, thinking I had like trigeminal neuralgia or something like that. Like it was just really weird, like facial spasms for like a couple of months at one point. Like they lasted not every single minute, but like throughout the day for a couple of months, I was getting these weird like facial spasms. Like what the fuck is this? What even is this? What's going on? Like these just weird symptoms. And then, of course, she had the RBD, which really kicked in. I was getting that almost daily at one point. Like every day I was waking up and punching myself in the face. And so I actually put on my old boxing gloves, so at least like if I woke up and punched myself, it wouldn't hurt as much. But, after a while, it's like that doesn't really work, so I got to try something else. So I was experimenting with all these different types of things, and, what am I going to do? Like I couldn't actually stop myself from punching myself because I didn't know how to do that. Like I didn't know what I was going to do. Nothing was working. I was trying out different supplements and stuff. Nothing was really working. I actually ended up having to tie my hands down while I slept and had this rope, and I would attached it to a couple of watches on both of my arms. And so like I'd put the watches on and tie the ends to the bottom of my bed. And, if I was sleeping and I, happened to punch myself in the face like that night, it wouldn't go up it would only stop to like my chest level. So I would never be able to hit myself in the face because I would like lay down and it would be out of my, it wouldn't have a long enough reach, the rope. And so I did that. And actually, to be 100% honest, I still actually use that technique, although I haven't had a RBD incident in months. Like I'll still, like I mentioned, it's not 100%. I'll still occasionally get some weird thing, and I think the last one I had was a couple months ago, but before that it was like 4 months ago. And so like, I mean, they're basically gone, but I'll still use those most nights anyways. Like, I'll still use those most of the time. And because, just in case, like I don't want to fucking punch myself in the face. Who wants to do that? So, like, that's still in the arsenal, but I don't use it all the time, and I don't have to use it all the time, which is, the best part of it all. But back then, almost a daily routine of this RBD fucking crazy shit, that was mandatory. That was one of the best inventions I ever had, too, was that little technique, because I just stopped them altogether from, hitting myself. But at that point, too, I was getting these weird hypnic jerks, which is actually kind of common when you're super stressed out, when you're facing something like, a stressful time in your life, you get something called hypnic jerks. They basically, scientists have said, and this makes a lot of sense, where it's basically a weird evolutionary adaptation that is kind of hung around in humans, but it basically comes from, or they think it comes from, which makes sense, that our ancient ancestors, possibly, I believe, maybe even apes, like, how we evolved from apes and all that other stuff, but I don't even know if they're necessarily talking. I forget. It's either apes or like very ancient ancestors of like cavemen and stuff, where they would like sleep out in trees, and like if they were about to fall, because your body shuts down at night, it goes into paralysis. That's normal. So you don't actually, say swing your arm up and punch yourself in the face or whatever, punch your partner in the face. Like your body shuts down, so you can't act out your dreams, and you can't, do something to hurt yourself or somebody else while you sleep. That's a normal thing. But say if you're sleeping in a tree, like, our ancient ancestors probably did, or even, before that, apes, which we, supposedly evolved from, they slept in trees. This little hypnic jerk thing would be if they were falling asleep and they were about to like fall out of the tree, they would like jerk themselves awake, so they would stop themselves from falling out of the tree and obviously hurting themselves. So, or even like other times of stress, like if there was like something that was about to hurt them or harm them, they would like jerk themselves awake, and then they'd be awake. They call these things hypnic jerks. I think there's a technical name for it, clototonic jerks or something like that. I forget it, but it's a hypnic jerk. It's a sleep jerk. Your whole body jerks and like you wake yourself up. And so when I'm going through all these RBD things, and I'm busy in the early, before I did the whole watch technique and the tying the thing down, before that it was a daily occurrence almost. And so like in the back of my mind, even though I wasn't even really stressed out consciously, in the back of my mind, subconsciously, I was stressed out about hitting myself in the face. And so I was always getting these hypnic jerks, and then these things, like I would about to fall asleep, and then I would like jerk myself awake. And these would like happen like multiple times throughout the night. And so like you couple that fact with the fact that it was basically either an RBD incident or it was a hypnic jerk, where I would just like, in both events, I would like not sleep. And so there was times where I wouldn't sleep for 2, 3, 4 days at a time between these two things. And it was just like multiple days of insomnia, like you wouldn't believe, like the worst possible insomnia you could get. And it was just horrible. So you add in all these things, and it's exacerbating the entire condition that I had and making everything worse, and, adding to my stress levels, which kind of would have been not bad. Like I said, I had that elite mind. I knew even in the worst of times, I knew that I was still going to pull myself. I just didn't know how. I knew it though. I felt it inside that I was going to pull it out, but that, I was still fucking stressed out. I mean, you can't not be stressed out in those times. And, consciously I was still maintaining my composure, but subconsciously, I think, it was haywire. It was pretty wacky. And outwardly, like if I go out to the community or around friends or family, I was still maintaining myself. But in the privacy, when I'm in my home by myself in my room, nobody's around, there was definitely times where I broke down. I would cry. There was times where I'd get depressed. I'd get down on myself. There was times where I'd get, a little anxious and worried about what was going to happen. And, especially in that first year where I'm not seeing any results, and everything I'm just trying is just fucking not working. Nothing was working, man. Nothing. Everything I was doing was just failing, one thing after the other. And, I'm going to all these doctors, literally well over a dozen total doctors, and maybe close to 24 doctors within like that first year. Like I was just trying everything you could imagine and just trying to get a diagnosis, getting all these MRIs, these functional MRIs. I did a volumetric MRI. I did an EEG. I did multiple sleep studies. I did electromyogram and EMG, which is what they give people who potentially have ALS. When I was getting these weird like spasms and like twitches and like these, almost like something's crawling under your skin. I was getting them on my arms and legs like constantly. I think they call it like facial, fasciitis or something. I don't forget what the hell it's called, but it's like these weird like crawling feelings of like spasmy things going on underneath your skin. I looked those up too, and that's like, and I don't know exactly if it's true or not, but those all have a precursor. Some of those, anyways, have a precursor to neurological conditions like, say, Parkinson's or multiple system atrophy or multiple system Parkinson's. There's like a multiple system Parkinson's variation that's related to it, as well as ALS, of course, and some of the other ones, MS too. A lot of these are interconnected. But either way, when you start to get these weird fucking crawling things underneath your skin and these like spasms and twitches and like minor tremors too. At one point, I was starting to get these minor tremors in my arms, and holding up a book, my arms, the book would be shaking really well, and you combine all these things, these like tingling things, and all these weird fucking things going on. It was pretty scary, and I'd be lying if I said that, I was cool the whole time, because I certainly wasn't. There was a lot of stressful times, a lot of crazy, down times, but I'm doing all these tests. I get the neurofeedback tests, I get the MRIs, the sleep studies, every blood test imaginable you could think of, and none of these doctors are able to give me any advice. They have no real diagnosis. They're just kind of like, you don't fit all these criteria for early Parkinson's, so we can't say you have it. You have something, we just don't know what it is. But I'm like, look at the RBD thing and all this other stuff, and did the sleep study, and it ends up, they end up basically saying, you're right, you have something serious. It could very well be Parkinson's, early Parkinson's, but we just can't. You don't fit the check boxes quite yet, and you're only at the time like 27 years old. You're only 27. There's nobody that we know who's gotten Parkinson's at 27. And I'm like thinking in the back of my head, like, yeah, there's nobody who's kind of put all the pieces together either, like me, and done all the research and all that. Like, I'm kind of like pissed off at this point, because I'm like, dude, I know it's fucking this. I did research, and they're basically telling me like, get fucked. We don't have nothing. We have no answers for you. Leave us alone. But of course, I'm not just going to leave them alone. Actually, did leave them alone, but not before trying everything under the sun and getting all these tests and all these other things done. And even like looking back now, even if they gave me a diagnosis, even if they said it was this, even if they did, more and more tests like I wanted them to do and some other things, and at the end of the day, what I ended up doing, which I'll get to in a moment, totally like circumvented everything that I had done before as far as going to all these doctors. And not only did I go to all the traditional doctors and the, specialists and the physicians and the neurologists, multiple neurologists, probably like 4 or 5 neurologists, maybe 6 neurologists alone. Not only did I do all that, but then I went over when I wasn't getting the results and the advice and the diagnosis and an actual protocol. Like, I knew all along I wasn't going to get them to really help me, but I didn't need it, but I thought I needed a diagnosis. I needed something to kind of go off of, and that's why I did all these tests. But they couldn't give me any advice. They couldn't. There was no direction there. It was a shit show. It was a lot of wasted time, a lot of driving around, and a lot of wasted appointment hours and times of day, and driving back home after these appointments and not getting the answers and the news I wanted, of just like depressing fucking hours of my life wasted away. So at that point, I turned to non-traditional doctors and started going to the functional doctors, started going to the naturopaths, the chiropractors, neurofeedback doctors, the cranial sacral therapy specialists, the holistic healing coaches, a brilliant chemist and scientist I know who kind of coached me through some stuff, an online health coach, as well as energetic healers, psychic healers, a shaman. I did a shaman reading. It was probably like 3-hour reading one time. Psychics were in there for sure. I mean, like every fucking thing under the sun you can imagine. I was not going to leave any stone unturned. And I tried everything. And that was all within like the first year of this. And eventually, like some of the things I mentioned, by the way, like the cranial sacral, the chiropractors, the neurofeedback, I'm not 100% sure about, but I do believe it helped a little bit. You can't really prove that one. That one's tough, but definitely the craniosacral, the chiropractor, and I would actually put the neurofeedback in that as well. That guy who did that as well was awesome, and he was just such a great guy that I can't not put him in there. But as far as like knowing for sure if that worked, I can't really say for sure, but I do feel like it worked. So I will throw that in the category of things that did actually help. But most of the other shit really didn't help. I mean, a lot of it was a lot of wasted money, a lot of wasted time. And, for the first year or so, the symptoms, not only did they not go away, but they actually got worse. The headaches were worse. The trigeminal neuralgia-like symptoms, it was never trigeminal neuralgia, I don't think, but, the symptoms of it, the RBD, the hypnic jerks, the headaches, the migraines, the insomnia, all these things, the tingling, the spasms, the twitching, the tremors, the minor, not like tremor. My grandmother actually had Parkinson's, and she ended up dying from it. She was like in her late 60s, maybe she was like, I think early 70s, but she had Parkinson's like Muhammad Ali had it. Like she almost, not as actually as bad as him because she still had her voice, but she was shaking like you wouldn't believe, and it was really sad. I can't say that I ever had that. It was never anything like that, ever. The tremors never like that. But it was like a minor fucking tremor in my hands, and like a very, very minor. It was the beginning, I believe, of that. But that was all starting to get worse in that first year. It didn't even get better. It started to get worse. And here I am trying everything under the sun. Nothing's working. I end up actually doing the keto diet, and the first, maybe like 6 months into this like crusade of probably like 7 to 8 months, maybe 9 months actually into this crusade of figuring things out. For 9 months of trying everything on the sun, throwing things against the wall, nothing's working. I ended up jumping on the keto diet after doing a ton of research into that. I'm like, this is, pretty promising, and I'm thinking it's going to work. It helped out for maybe a first month or so. It was pretty, like I had like this weird like energy. I wasn't sleeping as much, but I didn't need to sleep as much. I had this, I felt pretty good. My headaches seemed to be like they were going down. And, I felt like I'd found the answer. And for like a month or so, the only drawback was that in the very second day of actually jumping on the keto diet, I got this sty in my eye, and the thing fucking blew up and lasted like for the next 9 or 10 months. Like it would not go away. This thing was ridiculous looking. It was hideous. I was like super self-conscious of it because like when I saw new people, it was like I had a fucking giant mass coming out of one of my eyes. I looked weird. I felt weird. And that was like the only drawback I could think of at the time of like the keto diet. I was like, oh, this thing's great. My energy's great. And, my headaches seem to like they're going down. My sleep is like less, but I don't need as much. And like when I sleep pretty good. But after like into say months, I did it for almost 4 months. So into like months 2 and then like months 3, I'm like, this thing fucking sucks. It didn't work. My energy faded by then. My stress levels were up like crazy. My sleep actually got horrible, and I was like in and out of sleep, like getting a lot of the insomnia again. The headaches came back like worse than ever before. My tingling in the legs, the spasms, and all that other shit came back like never before. Like they were at an all-time high. The sty at this point had really pissed me off because the other, before it was like, well, sty, whatever, trade-off, I can heal myself, I don't care. But then the sty was like, worse than ever, and it was pissing me off worse than ever. And then, you had the, I started getting the intolerance to protein meals, like any type of meat, any type of high fat. Like I would start throwing up. I was getting very sick from staying on this diet. Like I was almost throwing up every night from the eating like shit of these high-fat meals, these high-fat, high-protein meals to stay on that diet. And I was like, I have to fucking quit this thing. It's just not like it. That was a very, very disappointing thing because I was so convinced at the time and for those like 4 months or so that I had found the key and I was like going to heal myself. And, by months like 3 going into the 4th month, I was so disappointed, so dejected that I'd wasted all that time doing this fucking diet and, sacrificing all these things and not going out and keeping like a super strict diet. And to figure out to see that was such a failure was a huge blow. It was definitely a huge blow to me at the time. But it was right around like, whatever you believe in, the world, the universe, God works in mysterious ways for sure, because right around this time, like I had just decided that it was probably right after I threw up too. I'm sitting there at night and I'm like just scrolling through Facebook. I was probably on my my iPhone at the time, scrolling through some Facebook and just being super, super dejected and like wondering what the hell I'm going to do next, like defeated like you wouldn't believe, and trying to figure out how I'm going to go to the Ukraine and save up some money and go to the Ukraine and get some stem cell therapy. Because that is the only thing I can possibly think of for how I'm going to heal myself. None of this other shit has worked. And believe me, I was trying. Before the keto thing, I had tried every single diet out there. I was researching everything. I was trying these weird things, going to every doctor, trying all these wacky protocols and taking all kinds of supplements and everything you can imagine. And it just wasn't working. Everything was getting worse. My health was fucking going down the shitter, and it just was terrible. But I'm sitting there one night at like basically right after I decided, I actually was still technically on the diet, but I had decided like the day before, or maybe 2 days before, that I was going to quit the diet and I had to find something else. Like I was basically just didn't know what the hell it was, but I knew I couldn't stay on keto much longer because, obviously throwing up daily is a horrible thing for your health, no matter what the hell you're doing or what you're trying to do. Scrolling through Facebook, though, I come across this random post. It's about Lyme disease. And I just, being the health guy I am, I click on the post and it's like, oh, that's interesting. And I kind of start reading the post and it's like, wow, that's pretty weird, but that actually makes sense. And I start reading it more and more and more. And I'm like, holy shit, this is pretty cool. Like, this really makes sense. This is like the true cause of Lyme disease, because up until that point, I knew Lyme disease was bacterial. And I also knew that so many people, I actually had friends, like 3 or 4 friends who had chronic Lyme disease, and none of them were healing. And at the time, it was like one of those things I kind of put in the back of my mind of like, yeah, I'm going to check this out at some point. It was just like so focused on the health, on the brain and my health and all the other stuff. And that was the forefront of my mind. But the Lyme disease thing was something that I had wanted to go back to at some point. I came across it, thought about my friends at one point, and I was like, let me like look into this. I'm going to figure out like if there's a cure for this or how to reverse Lyme disease. And so I'm reading this article randomly, and I'm like, holy shit, this is fucking incredible. Like, this guy is like talking all about Lyme disease and what the true cause of Lyme, and this really makes a lot of sense because I know like all these doctors have it wrong because they're not healing anybody. And the guy was Anthony William. The guy was the medical medium, and I'm reading this random article that popped up on my Facebook timeline, and he's talking all about Epstein-Barr and how it's the cause of this and that, and it does this and this and this. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy's pretty fucking cool. And I'm like, I didn't even know his story at the point, but everything he was saying in the article was like mind-blowing, and it sounded so true. So I start doing some more research. I dig into him a little bit. I'm like checking out his site and all this other stuff, and then I ordered his book that night. Came in like 2 days later. I read his book, and my mind is fucking blown like you wouldn't believe. Like, I just discovered the Fountain of Youth or something, or El Dorado, or the lost city of Atlantis. Like, I just like, holy fuck, this information is incredible. I start reading the book 2 days later, and then about 2-3 days after that, I jump on the celery juice. And then maybe like 2 weeks after that, because it took me a little bit of time to get all the ingredients and kind of like build myself, but like 2 weeks after that, I jump on his heavy metal detox. And that was about 2 years ago. And like I said, I ended up, consulting, getting some coaching from some woman that healed up using his protocols. She helped out a ton. She kind of guided me through how to like do some of the supplementation and, timing of the foods and which foods are like better than others. Even though you can get all the information from the books and kind of do it on your own, it definitely helps to find somebody who has gone there before. Not exactly did what I did, or maybe what you're thinking, or what you're going through, but someone who's kind of been there before in that general space. It's always good to get some advice from them, and that's what I did. It helped me out a ton. So 6 months into this protocol, this strict, so it took about a couple of months before I decided I was going to dedicate myself into doing this guy's protocol. I wanted to kind of test it out a little bit. So I did the celery juice, the heavy metal detox for a couple of months, and was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. I want to actually like really step it up, and because I was still eating some other foods and dabbling around with some other stuff. But like two months or so into like reading his book, I decided I was going to get dedicated to actually following his whole protocol. So for 6 months, I basically did a raw vegan diet. The only thing, the first 2 months was 100% fruits and vegetables, like 100%, nothing cooked, 100% fruits and vegetables the entire day for 2 months. Then after that, after the 2 months, I added in steamed potatoes, and that was it. I like nothing hot was going into my mouth except for the steamed potatoes. And if you read the books, you read some of his advice, he says steamed potatoes are incredibly healing, despite what people say about the carbs in them or whatever else that, some of the myths out there about potatoes, the white carbs. Some people hate on potatoes, but potatoes are incredible for you. Sweet potatoes are incredible, but regular potatoes are just as good. So I did the regular potatoes and just fruits and vegetables, and the heavy metal detox was included, and the celery juice was also included in this. I did that for 6 months straight. Nothing else was put into my body for 6 months, and did all these supplements. Like, I still do incredible amounts of supplements right now, and actually most of these supplements, but if you look back then, I was probably taking like 30 different things throughout the day, like every few hours. And I would eat too, like small snack like bananas and dates and berries and all kinds of cherries and everything, like fruits, snacks, like throughout the day, like 6-7 meals, small meals throughout the day. And then in those meals, I would throw in these supplements. So I was just like constantly nourishing my body, constantly feeding it good foods, good supplements, giving it the things that it needed to heal up. Having those wild blueberries that are in the heavy metal detox, which again, they heal up those neurons in your brain. I knew I was doing all these right things, and my sleep started to improve. It took probably, maybe like a couple of months, probably 6, I want to say like 3 to 4 months before I started to like feel. So actually, all right, I fucked up this whole timeline. It probably took about like a month or two into that raw thing, like being a month or two into this diet, I started to feel a little bit better. Like my sleep had kind of come back down. I was starting to sleep a little better. The RBD was going down a little bit. I was taking 20 milligrams of melatonin. I actually still take 20 milligrams of melatonin. So that definitely helped out too. I always was cautious or like concerned about melatonin, thinking, you couldn't really jump on it. But melatonin is incredibly safe for you. It's incredibly powerful and helpful and healing for the brain. And I love melatonin now. I'm a huge fan of melatonin, but it took a couple of months for that, all those things that I was doing to really help bring down the crazy RBD symptoms. But after about 2 months, my sleep was it wasn't good, but it was almost like normal again. It was like almost back to being normal again. It was like coming down. So like 6 months into it, my sleep was normal again. It was like pretty good. Like it was like 6.5 hours a night, 7 hours a night, like pretty good. No real RBD. Every once in a while, maybe once every few weeks, I'd get an RBD thing or like a hypnic jerk here and there. 9 months into it, I felt really good. Like it was better than it was in a few years. It was like really good. 6.5, 7 hours, and then less and less RBD, less and less hypnic jerks. No insomnia really anymore. A year into it, I felt great. A year into this diet, and actually a year into it too, I added in, after 6 months, I should say, I added in a little bit of meat. Like I would do a little bit of meat throughout the day, and not even throughout the day, just one meal in the day. I would do a little bit of meat, just added that in, and like 6 months in, so I actually, so about 12 months into it, I was pretty much back to normal, but I did kind of skip a part of what I wanted to mention, and that is the first year, 6 months of this protocol before I even added in the meat was really stressful. Like that whole year being really dedicated to this diet was incredibly fucking stressful. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I'll be honest, I cut out all social life. I cut out all drinking, of course, no alcohol, not a sip. Didn't have, like I said, any meat for that first 6 months. Didn't like being around any people, any situations, like anything that could compromise, potentially jeopardize what I was doing with my health. Everything, I basically was like putting myself into a baby's environment of everything had to be perfect. I wouldn't even like want to be in like a freshly painted house or room or around smoke from a fire, say, and, if you're starting a fire in your chimney, or around cigarettes, God forbid. I would never be around cigarettes. I even got an air purifier for the home, and I wanted the air that I was breathing in to be 100% clean, and, all these things had to be perfect in my mind. And I was kind of like, almost like crazy about it, like OCD about these things, because in my mind I had to be, and in many ways I did have to be. I didn't want anything interfering with what I was going to do and what I was dedicating. So I gave myself, in my mind, a year to do this diet. And I didn't know if, 6 months from now I could be healed potentially. I didn't know if it would take more than a year, but I was going to give myself a year to dedicate to see how I would feel, to see if this thing was actually going to work. And I feel like if I had no changes in 6 months, I probably would have dropped it. But like in my mind, it was, if I start to see some progress, I'm going to give myself a full year of doing this fucking diet and, sticking with it. So I did. And I saw the little bits of progress. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't, it took a couple months to start seeing even the little bit of progress that I saw. But as the months went on, the days went on. I saw that progress. I started seeing these good things happening. The headaches were going away as well. The innocuous stimuli that would cause these headaches was going away. So like if I bumped into somebody, or if I, kept my hand on the doorknob when I kind of slammed it, that wasn't really a headache for a week anymore. It was maybe for like a day or maybe 2 days, and it would go away. And, the break, I actually played pool again after actually wasn't right away, maybe like 9 or 10 months into the diet. I picked up a pool stick again and played a game of pool, and it was incredible. And, these little things, I slowly started adding these back into my life and slowly started realizing that my health was getting better and better. And that's what allowed me to stick with this diet. So I did the year, and then I kept going, and I had the meat, and I basically still do this diet where I just have one big meal of meat a day. It's not like a huge meal, but it's a pretty big meal. It's my biggest meal of the day, and it's a meat, and I'll add in rice. And that's really it. The rest of the day is fruits and vegetables, and I'm cool with that. I've been doing this almost now 2 years, and my health is fucking incredible. Like I said at the beginning of the show, about 95% healed up, and I feel great. And I'll continue to do it because there's no reason for me not to do it. So some days I'll go out, like this past weekend. It was July 4th, and I definitely cheated, and I had all kinds of crap this weekend, and I drank way too much beer, and I had these foods that you're not supposed to eat because they feed viruses. I had a lot of corn. I had some pork. I had some sausages. I had a lot of hamburger, like a lot of cheeseburgers. Actually, you're not supposed to have cheese on this diet. Dairy, things like that. Like I never really eat cheese, but I do. But now after healing up and being at this point, I can cheat a little bit. Like I can have cheeseburgers. I can go to the restaurant, get regular food, and have a cheat day. And I could drink beers. I could drink some, a few extra beers than I should drink, and it's not going to kill me anymore. Like if I did this 2 years ago at the beginning of my diet, if I drank a couple beers, I wouldn't sleep for 4 days. You know what I mean? My whole neurotransmitter, my whole system, my adrenal glands, my cortisol, my epinephrine, all these chemicals would go haywire, and I wouldn't sleep for days. It would mess up. It would interfere with the RBD directly. Like that's a dopamine thing. The RBD is directly related to dopamine. So was in the early Parkinson's, by the way. Like they're all related. They're all connected. But there's damage at the what do you call it? The brainstem. In my brain from before, and I don't think there's really much left. There's like, a tiny percentage of a bit left still there, but there was in 2 years ago, a good amount, and 3 years ago actually, a good amount of damage from the traumatic blows, and also I think from some heavy metals and some viruses. And though that brainstem damage is what causes the neurons in that brainstem around that area is what leads to Parkinson's disease, because those neurons aren't there. They're not producing the dopamine, which is what leads to tremors and all these other symptoms of Parkinson's. When you stop producing the dopamine, you stop producing the ability to control your muscles unconsciously. Of course, you're not consciously shaking and all this other stuff, but it's an unconscious process. You lose that ability over time to control your muscles throughout your body. And I think I had the beginning stages of that. I had the low dopamine production, and that was leading to, when I go to sleep at the time, the inability of my body to stop itself from, say, acting out my dreams. And that inability of the muscle, the controlling of your muscles and actually shutting it down, was the beginning stages of Parkinson's. But yeah, you're going back to all these things, and it took a lot of dedication. I lost 20 to 25 pounds too. I'm on this diet, especially in the first 6 months. There's no fucking meat in there, and I'm a meat guy. And for my whole life was fitness and looking good and going to the gym and being fairly. I'm not a terribly big guy. I've mentioned this many times in the past. I'm not a huge guy, but I was, and I did pride myself in being in good shape, and also being pretty muscular for my inherently skinny frame. Like I'm pretty muscular for my size, and I lost a lot of muscle doing this. People, I'm going around in the first 6 months without having any meat, not getting that protein in, and just living off basically fruits and vegetables, and then obviously a little potato. But I lost 20 to 25 pounds, which I didn't have to lose. Like I'm already an inherently skinny guy, and I lose 25 fucking pounds. People think I'm either batshit crazy, I lost my mind, or they think I have cancer because I look like I had cancer. And so, I'm going around friends and family, and like I said, I told two people out of all the people in the world, I told two people about my condition. Everybody else, 99.999% of the people I come across think I'm either crazy or there's something fucking seriously wrong with me, and I ain't telling them what it was. I didn't tell them. I didn't want to tell them. And so, it was very sad. It was a tough time, that first 6 months. And then even, the 6 months after, it was like it took me some time to build some of that size back up and put some of the weight back on. But it was, in my mind, it was a dedication that I had to do. It wasn't like, well, people think I'm skinny and, they're looking at me kind of funny and, they're kind of questioning my sanity. So I have to stop this diet because, I want to please them. And it just never crossed my mind. I was dead set on following through with this diet and seeing, I was going to do whatever it took to overcome this condition. And that's what I did. I stuck with it against the wishes of many close people around me who thought I was, again, going crazy or thought I was following the wrong protocol to heal up, because it certainly didn't look like I was healthy. But that's the thing too. You see a lot of people, and on the outside they look great, but on the inside they're fucking doing horrible. And you can't look at somebody and say like, oh, this guy's gonna have a heart attack. You don't know, but this guy's gonna have a heart attack in like a week because his insides are terrible, or this guy has inflammation in his liver, or he's got kidney problems, or he has a thyroid problem, or he's got prostate cancer. You can't see somebody. They might look fucking great on the outside. They're jacked, they're muscular, they got a tan on, they're got a great smile. You can never tell that somebody's how their health really is just by their outside external appearance. And me on the outside, the funniest thing is I look great. 3 years ago when I was in the worst of my condition and I had all these symptoms starting to pop up with the RBD and all this other shit, I look great, very muscular, smiling on the outside. Everything was great. People look at me, they think I'm picture health. When, whereas on the inside, I'm actually really dying inside, and nobody can tell. Like, nobody knows how severe the things I was going through actually were. And so, if they can't actually see it, it's tough for them to comprehend when you tell them that you're all right, everything's good, that you're actually healing up, that you're actually starting to feel great. Like, I'd never dove into specifics, but I'm like, no, I feel great. I'm sleeping great. My headaches. Like, I would always just kind of sort of lie about what was going on and just chalk it up to, I get migraines, and so I'm trying this new diet out, or I can't really sleep great, so I'm trying this new diet out. And that would kind of be the extent of what I would explain my condition away as, because I never wanted to, tell everybody and, like I said, have them worry about me. And I also just didn't want to share it with a lot of people. But I would just kind of like mask what was really going on. I would sort of lie and say it was just a migraine thing, or like I get migraines or I get these headaches, and I'm trying this new weird diet out to kind of help with that. And like, oh, okay, cool. And they'd kind of like, say, oh yeah, keep it up, good job. But you knew what they really thought was, dude, you look fucking horrible, like stop this diet. And then they just kind of walk away, and that's it. And you walk away like, fuck, like, yeah, I know I look horrible, but I have to do this diet. Like, I really have to do that. You don't understand. Like, I'm not trying to do this for, to lose weight. And people would say that too, like, oh, you're losing all this weight, what are you doing? Like, you didn't have any weight to lose. Like, you get off this crazy diet. I'm like, I'm not doing this for fucking health, for physical reasons. I'm not doing this for appearance reasons. I'm not doing this for looks. I'm not doing this because I think I need to be fucking skinny and ripped and, have a 6 or 8 pack. I'm doing this because I have to do this. Like, I really fucking have no other options right now. This is the only thing I can possibly think of. And trust me, I've fucking tried everything else already and nothing has worked. So, at times it was definitely really frustrating to try to explain away what was happening and why I was doing the things I was doing. But again, I was never going to be deterred because some people didn't like or couldn't understand, or and not like I'm blaming anybody, but I wasn't going to be deterred by anybody else's thoughts. I knew in my mind what really mattered, and that was my thought and belief that I had to do what I had to do to overcome what I was facing. And like I said, it was scary, it was sad sometimes, it was depressing, it was terrifying at other times. I didn't know if it was going to work. I really had no idea if it was going to work. Even a few months into it, I still didn't know if it was going to work. It was honestly, I can compare it to, I've never been to, and I feel for the people who have been, and I've interviewed some of these guys, great guys, that I've interviewed, but I can kind of compare it to and feel like it would be similar to like jail or prison and going away. I didn't have any bars around me. I wasn't alone in a cell, but I did have self-imposed limitations, and I essentially had the same lifestyle as someone who was living in jail, where it was basically stay in, my room all day and do work and try to pass the time. And I can't fucking go out. Can't hang out with any friends. Can't live a normal life. I can't play these games like, pool or basketball like I was playing before. I can't fucking wrestle like I used to love wrestling. Boxing's out of the question. Like, that's kind of an extreme thing anyways, but, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, I still would love to do those things. I couldn't do any of those things. I wasn't going out drinking. I wasn't socializing. I wasn't hanging around. Like, I didn't do any of these fucking things. And to me, it felt like I was in this jail at times. It felt like I was in this self-imposed but necessary jail to commit to this goal of seeing this diet out and trying to heal myself. And it fucking sucked. It was terrible for a long period of time. And thankfully, it wasn't years I had to do this. It wasn't like, some people go to jail 5, 10, 20, 30 years. Like, I can't imagine how tough that is. But in a way, I kind of can. Like, I didn't do that kind of crazy fucking time, but I feel like I did do basically like a year, which is pretty fucking bad. And then even after that a little bit, I eased up though. After that year, I really eased up and started going out and hanging out with people a little bit, and actually started drinking a little bit. Like, I didn't drink crazy, and I'm drinking normal now. Basically, like, I drank 5, 10 when I first started drinking. Like, I'm drinking basically the same. Once a week is good for me, which is all I ever really drank before. But after about a year, I would drink here and there, but I would go out and try to socialize more and do that, because for my own sanity, I had to like I had to feel like back to normal again. And so, that's what I did. And it worked too. I think it mentally was kind of like refreshing to be able to go out, hang out again, and sort of recharge myself, and to be able to enjoy life again, start to like take those baby steps again into getting back into normal. And I wasn't even sure if it was going to continue to climb, if my health was going to continue to improve, or if it was going to stagnate, or if it was going to reverse and go back. And if it was going to reverse, I was going to be faced in a really tough position of what I was going to do at that point, because I was mentally, honestly drained from like separating and isolating myself from society. I was really going to have to make a tough decision there. I don't know what that decision was going to be, but fortunately, with the restrictions and just being careful about things, and kind of limiting myself in certain ways, like not going all out crazy, not eating like shit again, not drinking to excess, like, crazy, but just like being smart about things, my health, and doing the protocol. Like I said, I still do it today. Basically do the exact same protocol. The only thing is now I add in some meats, and I will go out and have some drinks here and there, like the 4th of July weekend, or, next weekend I'll probably have a drink or two. But like, those things I kept in place, and I was smart about it. I didn't just jump all back into like where I was 5 or 6 years ago and eat like shit and have all these high protein, high fat meals and go back to my crazy old diet. I didn't do all those things. And so my health continued to improve. I continued to supplement with like 90% of the things I was supplementing with before. And I continued to feel better, like not day by day, but like say over the course of the next month, 2 months, like it'll steadily, slowly get better and better. And it's fucking great. It's incredible. And so just kind of like, I know I've been talking now for, I think, an hour and a half or so, but I do want to sort of wrap things up in a moment. But, talking about like the overall journey, I still, 2 years into this thing, like I said, I'm 95%, give or take, healed up from this condition. And I feel incredible. I feel grateful. I feel blessed. I feel thankful. It gives you a new appreciation for life, for sure. And I sort of already had this, like I'm going through this whole diet thing the first year, and I'm like, shit, man, I can't wait to get back to normal life and like be happy again. And I was doing these meditations too, like Joe Dispenza's work's incredible. I've talked about him many times, and like he gave me a positive outlook and mindset. I was doing his meditations daily for such a long time, and he reaffirmed this belief of being thankful, being grateful, creating your reality by just sort of having the belief and mindset of being positive and then, you take that attitude and you carry that throughout the day. So maybe you're not necessarily like the law of attraction thing and, changing everything magically with your mind. But if you do have a positive mindset and you incorporate that throughout your routines and habits throughout the day, it certainly does change things. Absolutely does change things in your life. And so like having that mindset, I probably incorporated his stuff like 6 months into my diet. And then, from that point thereafter, like the next, 9-12 months from that point. And, so a year and a half into the diet, it was like daily Dispenza and a couple other guys as well, like Bruce Lipton stuff. And I was doing the Dr. Dawson Church thing. After I interviewed him, he had a free meditation. I was doing his stuff for a while too. Like I really liked him, and just having that positive mindset goes such a long way. But this is where I am today, 2 years into it. I feel incredible. I feel confident going forward. I feel, like I said, very blessed, very thankful in God. Whether you believe in God or not, I do believe in God and that there's something out there. But I do, and I would say this too before bed many times during this entire 2-year process, even like the 3 years, but obviously the first year, nothing really worked. So it's kind of a wash. But the past 2 years, especially when things would improve, and I would say these meditations, and also right before bed, I would just kind of pray, say a quick little prayer to God and also to the angels. Like actually Anthony mentioned in the one of his books, like these little what do you call it? I forget what he calls them, but these little prayers to angels and asking them for help and asking them to heal you. And that's a good way, I think, to go to bed, is having a last positive note, a final thought of healing yourself up, of being healthy again, of calling on angels or God or the universe or whatever else, just to give you that strength, that faith, and to help you heal on your journey. I think it is, again, some things in life you can't explain, but I do think that was a small piece to the overall puzzle of healing up, was having that mindset and that belief and that prayer and that faith and that, again, hope. Like I mentioned before a couple of weeks ago, that hope that things were going to prevail, that I was going to succeed, and that you're going to succeed in whatever you're facing in your life, whatever obstacle, whatever challenge that you're facing in your life. Having that faith, that hope, that belief that you can do it, I think is so critical for actually going and being able to do it. And that's really it. It's a long story, and probably could have been even longer in some places, but I think I covered basically all of it. And again, this was a podcast that I was dreading on doing for a long time, like the past few months, especially because I knew I was creeping up on it, and I got to do it. I told the guys I was going to do it. I just kind of holding off, dragging my feet. I didn't want to do it, but shit, it's got to be done. And I am very grateful at the end of the day that I, like I said, way back when, in my mind, way back when, years ago, 3 years ago, even before that, maybe not podcast, but I knew I was going to tell the story in some capacity, that this is actually a good day. I was waiting for this day. I'd be happy when this day came, because that would mean that I'd overcome all this shit I was facing. And like I said, I'm 95% there. Not 100% there yet. Not 100%, but I'm 95% there, and I'm continuing to etch closer and closer to that 100%. And at 95%, I'm comfortable and happy enough to share the success and journey that I've gone through the past couple of years. And, I hope it helps other people. I hope this message of healing, of overcoming a severe, crippling thing like this in your life can really help some people out. I don't know. I have really no idea how the reaction is going to be to this episode. But I do think, and I hope that it's going to help some people out there. I hope it's going to help some people understand that you can overcome anything, really overcome anything. And I've said this time and time again. This is why I've been so confident about this whole epidemic, this pandemic we faced the past few months. This is why I've been so confident, and it's nothing. You guys can overcome anything that comes your way, really. I haven't had 1 second of my life spent worrying about this pandemic, the the virus here that we're all facing that swept across the globe. There's not 1 second, literally, I'm not exaggerating, not 1 second of my life has been worrying about this virus, because I know I just fucking overcame one of the worst things you could possibly overcome. Realistically, like literally the worst, like you put it right up there with cancer in my eyes. Maybe even I've had the thought that cancer, I would have rather had cancer than what I had. I've had that thought many times during the process of having this thing that I had. You know, call it whatever you want. You can call it whatever you want, but I think it was early Parkinson's. You call it whatever you want, neurological, whatever, something. It was something neurologically serious. But I often had the thought that I'd rather have cancer, because at least cancer, there's been people that have done it before. Nobody has really done the Parkinson's thing before. Dr. John Gray is the only guy I've seen who's actually done it, who've like talked about doing it. You look up his stuff, and I've had the guy, and he's going to come back on the show soon too as well. Maybe in the next week or two, couple weeks. I think I got him coming back on. I got an interview schedule with him. Great guy. I've had him on the show a few times already. I love the guy, but he's done videos of him overcoming it, and he gave me a lot of hope and inspiration too that I could do it. But realistically, you know, you got this guy, and then you got Parkinson's. There's all kinds of different causes and, you know, things, and so, you know, it was always like, does he have what I have? It kind of sounds like it, but it's not really the same. It's a little bit different. There's some crossover. Like, that was always the question of mine. But the fact that he did it, he definitely inspired me incredibly, though. Like, I didn't follow his technique and his protocol. I took a couple things out of it, but I didn't follow it to the T. But, he was another guy that I was like, this guy did it, I can do it too. And so, leaving you with that message, I hope I inspire some people. You guys heard my story today. You got any questions, you can shoot me an email, DM me on Instagram or even Facebook. At Justin Stenstrom is my Instagram. I'm on that most. Same thing with Facebook, though, at Justin Stenstrom. Let me know your feedback. Let me know your thoughts. If you're going through anything, health conditions, anything like that, reach out to me. I'm happy to help in any way I can. And I hope this one helps you guys, because it was definitely a story that had to be told, but one that I was certainly dragging my feet on telling. But here it is. Let me know your reaction, guys. Shoot me the DM. Shoot me the email, Justin at Elite Men Magazine. Also, follow our YouTube channel, elitemanmagazine.com/YouTube. We're putting up all kinds of incredible content throughout the week. We got snippets of different videos, clips. I got more clips coming up on that as well that I've done, recorded different videos. They're all coming out. Every few days we're posting something on YouTube. Follow us. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube, elitemanmagazine.com/YouTube. And always the newsletter, elitemanmagazine.com/newsletter, to get all of the content. You'll never miss anything on there. We're never going to be censored on the newsletter. So make sure you join the newsletter today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, guys. I will talk to you next week. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. But before you go, there's one last thing I'd like you to do, and that's this. Subscribe to our podcast right now if you haven't already. By subscribing to the podcast, you get every single episode the minute they're released. Get all of our Elite Man podcast episodes and all of our world-class advice absolutely free. Subscribe now if you haven't already and become an Elite Man today. And yes, if you do love the podcast, leave us an amazing review. We really do appreciate it.